I was standing in my driveway holding a box of homemade cinnamon rolls still warm from the oven when the text message arrived. The phone buzzed against my hip and I shifted the box to one arm to check it. 8 words that would change everything. Don't come. Rachel doesn't want drama today. My chest tightened like someone had pulled a drawstring through my ribs. The cinnamon rolls suddenly felt like they weighed 50 pounds. Through the kitchen window of what used to be my house, I could see them all gathered around the table. My son David, his wife Rachel, my grandchildren Daniela and Tyler. They were laughing, passing dishes, living their lives without me. Again. Before we continue, let us know in the comments which country you're watching from. We love our global family. If this resonates with you, please subscribe. Your support helps us share more chilling tales. That was the moment I realized silence could be louder than screaming. 3 months earlier I thought I knew what family meant. For 15 years, I had been the invisible foundation holding up everyone else's dreams. When David graduated college with a business degree and stars in his eyes, I co-signed the loan for his first house. When Rachel wanted to quit her job to be a stay-at-home mom, I quietly covered the mortgage payments for 6 months. When little Daniela needed speech therapy that insurance wouldn't cover, I wrote the checks without being asked. I told myself it was what fathers do. What grandparents do. You show love through action, through sacrifice, through the quiet heroism of always saying yes when your family needs you. But somewhere along the way my yes had become expected. My help had become entitlement. My presence had become optional. The signs were small at first. Eye rolls when I offered advice about Tyler's soccer technique. Interrupted conversations when I tried to share stories from my own childhood. David would check his phone while I was talking. Rachel would find sudden urgent tasks in the kitchen when I arrived for dinner. At family gatherings, I found myself gravitating toward the children's table, not because I was childish, but because Daniela and Tyler still looked at me when I spoke. They still laughed at my jokes about the squirrels in my backyard. They still hugged me without being reminded. The adults, my own son and daughter-in-law, treated me like furniture. Useful when needed, ignored otherwise. I remember one particular Sunday dinner, about 6 months before the cinnamon roll incident. I had brought my famous apple pie, the recipe that had won 3 county fair blue ribbons. Rachel barely glanced at it as she set it on the counter. "Oh, you didn't need to bring anything, Theodore," she said, already turning away. "We have plenty of dessert." Theodore. Not Dad. Not even Ted. The formal distance of my full name, like I was the mailman or a neighbor she barely knew. David didn't even look up from his phone. "Thanks, Dad," he mumbled, but his fingers never stopped scrolling. I watched my pie sit untouched on the counter while they served store-bought ice cream to the kids. Daniela asked for a slice of Grandpa's pie, and Rachel quickly redirected her attention to the ice cream. "This is a special treat, honey. Much better than heavy pie." That night, I took the entire pie home, ate 1 slice and threw the rest away. It tasted like sawdust and broken promises. But I kept showing up. I kept contributing to Tyler's college fund, kept paying for Daniela's violin lessons, kept being available whenever they called with a crisis. Because that's what you do for family, right? You don't keep score. You don't expect gratitude. You just love them and hope they remember that love when it matters. The phone calls came regularly, but only when they needed something. David's voice would change to that particular tone, sheepish but entitled, when he was about to ask for money. "Hey Dad, quick question. Rachel's car is making that noise again, and you know how tight things are right now with the kids' activities?" I always said yes. The car repair, the unexpected medical bill, the home improvement project that suddenly became urgent. I said yes because I believed that's what love looked like. Unconditional support. No questions asked. No strings attached. What I didn't realize was that I had trained them to see me as a resource rather than a person. A wallet with legs. A safety net that would always be there, no matter how they treated the man holding it. The shift happened gradually, like a photograph fading in sunlight. You don't notice it day by day, but when you compare it to the original, the difference is stark. My birthday passed unacknowledged last spring. Not even a phone call. When I mentioned it the following week, David looked genuinely confused. "Oh, was that last Tuesday?" "Sorry, Dad, things have been crazy with Tyler's tournament season. Crazy enough to forget your father's 71st birthday, but not too crazy to post 17 photos on social media of Tyler's baseball games." I started paying attention to their social media posts, something I'd never done before. Photo after photo of family dinners, vacation trips, holiday celebrations. Beautiful, happy family moments. With one notable absence, me. It wasn't that they were deliberately cropping me out. It was worse than that. They simply weren't inviting me to be in the picture in the first place. The Thanksgiving invitation came 2 days before the holiday. "If you don't have other plans," Rachel said over the phone, "you're welcome to join us. But we're keeping it small this year." Keeping it small. As if my presence made gatherings large and unwieldy. As if I was the extra person who complicated their perfect family dynamic. I brought 2 dishes anyway, green bean casserole and pumpkin bread. I spent 3 hours cooking, arrived exactly on time, and found myself seated at the far end of the table, next to Tyler's friend whose parents were out of town. The conversation flowed around me like water around a stone. David discussed his promotion at work, news I was hearing for the first time. Rachel talked about their planned Christmas vacation to Colorado, also news to me. "Are you going anywhere for Christmas, Mr. Henley?" Tyler's friend asked politely. The table went quiet. David and Rachel exchanged a look I wasn't supposed to catch. "Probably just staying home," I said quietly. I liked the peace and quiet. It was a lie and we all knew it. But it was easier than admitting that I hadn't been invited on their Christmas vacation, despite the fact that I had been funding Tyler's ski lessons for 2 years. After dinner, while the adults chatted in the living room, I found myself in the kitchen with Daniela, helping her wrap leftover pie. "Grandpa," she said quietly, "why do Mom and Dad get weird when you're here?" The question hit me like a physical blow. Even an 8-year-old could see what I had been trying so hard to ignore. "What do you mean, sweetheart?" She looked around to make sure we were alone. "They talk different when you come over. Like they're pretending to be happy but they're really just waiting for you to leave." Out of the mouths of babes. Daniela had articulated what I had been feeling for months but couldn't quite name. The forced smiles, the careful politeness, the subtle urgency to end visits. I wasn't a welcome guest in my son's home. I was a tolerated obligation. That night, I drove home in silence, Daniela's words echoing in my head. When I got home, I sat in my kitchen, the same kitchen where I had taught David to make pancakes, where we had done homework together, where we had talked about his dreams and fears, and I finally admitted the truth to myself. They didn't want me there. They wanted my money, my reliability, my willingness to solve their problems. But they didn't want me. The realization should have made me angry. Instead, it made me tired. Bone deep, soul-weary tired. The cinnamon roll morning was supposed to be different. Daniela had mentioned during our last phone call that she was nervous about her violin recital. "I wish you could come, Grandpa, but Mom says it's just for immediate family." Immediate family. I was her grandfather, but apparently not immediate enough. So I did what I always did. I tried to show love in the way I knew how. I got up at 5 in the morning and made cinnamon rolls from scratch, using my late wife Margaret's recipe. Daniela had always loved them and I thought maybe I could drop them off before the recital, wish her luck, give her something sweet to think about during her performance. I drove to the house I had helped them buy, parked in the driveway I had helped them pave, and was walking toward the front door I had helped them paint when the text arrived. "Don't come. Rachel doesn't want drama today." Drama. Wanting to support my granddaughter was drama. I stood there for a long moment, holding the box of still warm cinnamon rolls, feeling something inside me break. Not shatter. Shattering is violent and sudden. This was more like ice melting. The cold, hard thing I had built around my hurt finally warmed enough to let the truth seep through. I wasn't family to them anymore. I was an inconvenience they tolerated because of my usefulness. I walked back to my car without knocking, set the cinnamon rolls on the passenger seat, and sat behind the wheel for 10 minutes, watching my breath fog the windows. Through the kitchen window, I could see David making coffee, Rachel braiding Daniela's hair for the recital. Normal family morning routines that didn't include me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was David. "Sorry about Rachel's text. She's just stressed about the recital. You understand." I understood perfectly. I understood that I had spent 15 years teaching them that they could treat me however they wanted, and I would still be there with my checkbook and my unconditional love. I understood that my silence in the face of disrespect had been interpreted as acceptance. I understood that I had trained my own family to see me as less than human. That night, I sat in my study, the same room where I had run my small accounting practice for 30 years, the same room where I had carefully managed my money and investments to ensure I could always help my family, and I made a decision. I wasn't going to explain myself anymore. I wasn't going to beg for inclusion or acceptance. I wasn't going to enable their disrespect with my silence. I was going to document everything. And then I was going to show them exactly what they had been taking for granted. The first thing I did was gather my financial records. 15 years of bank statements, canceled checks, money transfers, and receipts. I spread them across my dining room table like evidence in a courtroom, which, in a way, they were. The numbers were staggering even to me. $45,000 for the down payment on their house in 2009. $12,000 for David's MBA program when he decided to invest in his future. $8,500 for Rachel's car when hers broke down and they couldn't afford a payment right now. $23,000 in various emergency funds over the years. Medical bills, home repairs, unexpected expenses that somehow always became my responsibility to solve. $15,000 for Tyler's travel baseball team equipment and tournament fees. $9,000 for Daniela's violin lessons, summer music camps, and a half-size violin that cost more than my first car. $6,000 for their Colorado vacation last year, because the kids really need this family time, and they were just a little short this month. The list went on and on. Mortgage payments when David was between jobs. Utility bills when money was tight. Groceries when the budget was stretched. Christmas presents when they wanted to give the kids a really special holiday. In total, over 15 years, I had given them $156,000. Not loaned. Given. Because every time, it was presented as a temporary help, a family emergency, a one-time need. And every time, I said yes without asking for paperwork or repayment schedules or even acknowledgement that it was a significant sacrifice on my part. $156,000. More than many people make in 3 years. But the money was only part of the story. I also documented the pattern of exclusion, the missed holidays, the forgotten birthdays, the social media posts that erased my existence. I started keeping a journal, writing down every interaction, every slight, every moment when I was made to feel like an outsider in my own family. The journal entries were painful to read even as I wrote them. Called David to ask about Tyler's game yesterday. He seemed annoyed that I wanted to attend. Said the bleachers would be crowded and I might not enjoy it. Realized later from Rachel's Facebook post that her entire extended family was there. Daniela called to tell me about her A+ on the history project. When I asked if I could take her for ice cream to celebrate, she said she had to ask Mom first. Called back an hour later to say Mom thought it was too much excitement for a school night. Meanwhile, Rachel posted photos of them at Chuck E. Cheese that same evening. David asked for $2,000 to fix their fence after the storm. Wrote the check immediately. 3 weeks later, saw on social media that they had installed a pool instead. When I asked about the fence, David said it wasn't that urgent after all, and changed the subject. Each entry was like looking at a photograph of my own diminishing importance in their lives. I had become a bank that happened to be related to them. An ATM with emotions they found inconvenient. But I was also discovering something else in my research. Legal documents I had forgotten about. Financial leverage I didn't realize I still held. The house deed, for instance. In 2009, when I co-signed for their mortgage, the bank had required my name on the title as security for the loan. David and Rachel had promised to refinance within 2 years and remove my name. That was 13 years ago. My name was still on that deed. Legally, I owned half their house. The same was true for David's car, the one I had co-signed for when his credit was damaged after his business failed. My name was on that title too. And then there was my will. David was listed as the primary beneficiary of my estate, which, after a lifetime of careful saving and investing, was worth considerably more than the $156,000 I had already given them. My house, my savings, my retirement accounts, my life insurance policy, all of it was set to go to a son who couldn't be bothered to invite me to my granddaughter's recital. I made an appointment with Harrison Burke, the estate attorney who had handled Margaret's will. Harrison was old-school professional, the kind of man who still wore three-piece suits and called everyone sir or ma'am. He listened to my situation without judgment, asked clarifying questions about the financial support I had provided, and reviewed the legal documents I brought. "Theodore," he said finally, "you're in a much stronger position than you realize. The property co-ownership gives you significant leverage. The financial support you've provided could legally be restructured as loans rather than gifts, if that's how you want to proceed. And of course, your will can be changed at any time. What would you recommend?" Harrison leaned back in his leather chair, steepling his fingers. "That depends on what you want to accomplish. If you want to send a message about respect and gratitude, there are several legal avenues. If you want to protect your assets from further exploitation, we can do that too. But I have to ask, have you tried talking to them directly about how you feel?" I thought about that question for a long time. "Harrison, I've spent 15 years talking with my actions. I've shown up, paid up, and supported them in every way I could think of. They've responded by treating me like an inconvenience. I don't think more talking is going to solve this problem." He nodded slowly. Then let's discuss your options. We spent 2 hours going over the possibilities. Asset protection trust, will modifications, loan documentation, property rights. By the time I left his office, I had a clear plan and a folder full of documents to review. That night, I sat in my kitchen with a cup of coffee and Harrison's paperwork spread before me. For the first time in months, I felt something I had almost forgotten. Power. Not the power to hurt them, but the power to stop enabling their disrespect. The power to choose my own worth. I started small. The automatic transfer I had set up to help with Tyler's baseball expenses, $300 a month, I simply canceled. No phone call, no explanation, just a quick call to the bank to stop the transfer. The same with Daniela's violin lessons. The music school had been billing my credit card directly for 2 years. I called and had my card removed from their system. I waited to see if anyone would notice. It took 3 weeks. David called on a Tuesday evening, his voice carrying that familiar note of barely controlled panic that usually preceded a request for money. "Dad, there's some kind of mix-up with Tyler's baseball account. They're saying we owe $600 in back fees, but I thought you were handling that." I said calmly. But I decided to stop. There was a long pause. Stop? Why? Because I wanted to. Another pause, longer this time. "Okay, well, can you just cover this one time? We'll figure out a different system going forward." No. The word hung between us like a bridge I had just burned. In 15 years of saying yes to everything, I had never simply said no without explanation or apology. "Dad, what's going on? Are you okay? Is this about the recital thing?" Because I explained that Rachel was just stressed. "David," I interrupted quietly, "I'm fine. I'm just not paying for Tyler's baseball anymore." "But Dad, you know we can't afford." "Then maybe Tyler needs to find a less expensive activity." I hung up before he could respond. The next call came from Rachel 2 days later. Her voice was tight with the kind of controlled anger I recognized from years of family dinners where she had smiled while seething. "Theodore, I don't know what David said to upset you, but punishing Tyler for it isn't fair. He's just a child." "I'm not punishing anyone, Rachel. I'm simply choosing how to spend my money. This is ridiculous. You've been paying for his baseball for 3 years. You can't just stop in the middle of the season." "I can actually, and I have." "What's gotten into you?" The question was so perfectly tone-deaf that I almost laughed. What had gotten into me was self-respect. What had gotten into me was the realization that being a doormat wasn't the same as being loving. "Nothing's gotten into me, Rachel. I'm just tired of being taken for granted." "Taken for granted? Theodore, that's completely unfair. We appreciate everything you do. When was the last time you said thank you?" Another long pause. We say thank you all the time." "When?" The silence stretched until she hung up. Over the next month, I systematically removed myself from their financial ecosystem. The utility bills I had been quietly supplementing. The grocery money I provided when they were tight. The automatic transfers to their savings account for emergencies. Each cancellation felt like removing a chain I hadn't realized I was wearing. But the most important change I made was to my will. Harrison had prepared new documents that reflected my current feelings about family loyalty and respect. David was no longer the primary beneficiary. Instead, the bulk of my estate would go to Daniela and Tyler in trust funds they could access when they turned 30, old enough to understand the value of money and respect. A portion would go to the children's hospital where Margaret had been treated, in her memory. And a smaller amount would go to David, with a letter explaining why he was receiving less than he had expected. The new will was signed, witnessed, and sealed in Harrison's safe. David would remain unaware of the change until after I was gone, but knowing it was done gave me a peace I hadn't felt in years. I also took care of the co-ownership issues. I consulted with a real estate attorney about my options regarding the house David and Rachel lived in. Legally, I could force a sale and take my 50%. But that felt unnecessarily cruel, especially to the children. Instead, I had official documentation prepared that formalized my ownership stake and required my written consent for any major changes to the property. Refinancing, home equity loans, selling. They could continue living there, but they could no longer make financial decisions about the house without acknowledging my legal ownership. The attorney also helped me document the $156,000 in financial support as loans rather than gifts. Retroactively restructuring them was legally complex, but not impossible, especially given that there was never any formal gift documentation. The loans would be non-interest bearing and payable from David's inheritance, but they would be officially recorded as debts rather than generosity. 3 months after the cinnamon roll incident, I had quietly reclaimed control of my financial life and legal assets. I had stopped enabling their sense of entitlement. And I had protected my future estate from being taken for granted. The calls became more frequent as the financial reality set in. Tyler had to quit travel baseball and join the less expensive recreation league. Daniela's violin lessons were reduced from weekly to bi-weekly. The family vacation to Disney World was canceled. Each time David called to discuss the situation, I listened politely and explained that I was simply choosing to be more careful with my money. I never raised my voice. I never accused them of taking advantage. I simply stopped being available as their personal bank. "Dad, I don't understand what's wrong," David said during one of these calls. "Did we do something to upset you?" The question was so perfectly oblivious that it took my breath away. Did they do something? They had excluded me from family gatherings, forgotten my birthday, treated me like an inconvenience, and dismissed my attempts to be part of their lives. But they genuinely couldn't see any of that as doing something. "David," I said quietly, "when was the last time you invited me to dinner just because you wanted my company?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, when was the last time you called me and said, 'Dad, come over, we'd love to see you,' without needing money or babysitting or help with something?" The silence stretched long enough that I thought he might have hung up. "Dad, you're always welcome here. You know that." "Am I?" "Because the last time I tried to come over, Rachel texted me not to come because she didn't want drama. That was different. She was stressed about Daniela's recital. And my wanting to support my granddaughter was drama?" Another long pause. "Dad, I think you're misunderstanding." "David, I'm 71 years old. I've been your father for 38 years. I think I understand when I'm not wanted." That conversation ended like all the others, with David promising to talk to Rachel and work things out, and me quietly knowing that nothing fundamental would change. They were upset about losing their financial safety net, not about losing me. The breaking point came in late November, almost a year after the cinnamon roll incident. David and Rachel requested a family meeting to clear the air about our misunderstandings. They chose a restaurant, neutral ground they called it, as if we were negotiating a business deal rather than trying to salvage a family relationship. I agreed to meet them, though I had no illusions about what the conversation would accomplish. They were already seated when I arrived, and I could see from their body language that this was a coordinated effort. Rachel sat up straight with her hands folded, the picture of reasonable concern. David wore his serious business expression, the one he used for important meetings at work. "Dad," David began before I had even ordered coffee, "we need to understand what's going on. This silent treatment isn't like you." Silent treatment. As if my refusal to bankroll their lifestyle was tantamount to childish pouting. "I'm not giving you the silent treatment, David. I talk to you every time you call." "But you're not participating," Rachel said carefully. "You're not part of the family the way you used to be." The irony was breathtaking. I wasn't participating? I had been trying to participate for years while they systematically excluded me from everything except financial emergencies. "What would you like me to participate in?" I asked. They exchanged a look. "Well, Tyler's birthday is coming up," David said. "We were hoping you could help with the party expenses. And Daniela's violin teacher thinks she's ready for a better instrument." There it was. The real reason for the family meeting. They didn't want to rebuild our relationship. They wanted to restore their access to my wallet. "How much?" I asked. "How much what?" Rachel seemed confused. "How much do you need?" "For the party and the violin." They exchanged another look, this one hopeful. "Well, the party venue is $800 and a good violin for Daniela would be around $3,000. So you need $3,800 from me?" "Dad, it's not like that," David protested. "We're family. We're just asking for help." "And what are you offering in return?" The question seemed to puzzle them. "In return?" "Yes. What are you offering me in return for $3,800? "Dad, families don't work that way. You don't charge family members for helping them." I leaned back in my chair and studied my son's face. He genuinely believed what he was saying. In his mind, I owed them financial support simply by virtue of being their father and grandfather. The idea that respect, inclusion, and gratitude might be reasonable expectations in exchange for that support had never occurred to him. "You're right," I said. "Families don't charge each other. They also don't exclude each other. They don't forget birthdays. They don't send text messages saying don't come when a grandfather wants to support his granddaughter." Rachel's face flushed. "Theodore, I explained that. I was stressed." "Rachel, you've been stressed about my presence for 3 years. David, you've been too busy to include me in anything but emergencies for even longer. You want my money but you don't want me. That's not true, David said, but his voice lacked conviction. When was the last time you invited me to dinner? Dad, you're always welcome. When, David? Give me a specific date when you called and said, Dad, come have dinner with us because we enjoy your company. The silence was answer enough. I'll make you a deal, I said finally. I'll contribute to Tyler's birthday party and Daniela's violin. But in exchange, I want something from you. They leaned forward eagerly. I want to be included. Really included. I want invitations to family dinners that don't come with the caveat that I might be inconvenient. I want to be told about Tyler's games and Daniela's recitals in advance, not as an afterthought. I want birthday calls and holiday invitations and the basic courtesy that you show to your friends. Dad, of course. I'm not finished. I also want an acknowledgement that over the past 15 years, I've given you $156,000 in financial support. Not loaned. Given. I want you to understand the magnitude of that generosity and to stop treating it as something I owe you. The number hung between us like a physical object. I had never totaled it up for them before and I could see the shock on their faces. And finally, I continued, I want an apology. A real one. For the years of taking me for granted, for excluding me from family activities, for treating me like a burden rather than a blessing. David and Rachel sat in stunned silence. If you can do those things, I said, then we can rebuild our relationship. If you can't, then we'll remain cordial but distant, and you'll manage your finances without my help. I stood up and placed a $20 bill on the table to cover my untouched coffee. Think about it, I said, and let me know what you decide. I walked out of the restaurant knowing that I had finally drawn a line in the sand. For the first time in years, I had stated my worth clearly and given them a choice. Treat me with respect or lose access to my support. It felt like the most honest conversation we'd had in a decade. The apology came 3 weeks later, and it came from an unexpected source. Daniela called me on a Tuesday evening, her young voice serious in a way that reminded me painfully of her father at the same age. Grandpa, can I come talk to you? Mom said she would drive me over if it's okay. An hour later, my 8-year-old granddaughter was sitting at my kitchen table with a glass of milk and a homemade chocolate chip cookie, looking at me with eyes that held more wisdom than they should have at her age. Grandpa, she said carefully, I heard Mom and Dad talking about money and birthdays and being mean to you, and I wanted to say I'm sorry. The simple honesty of it nearly broke my heart. You don't have anything to apologize for, sweetheart? Yes, I do. I never said thank you for my violin lessons, or for the music camp last summer, or for all the times you came to my concerts and clapped really loud. Her eyes filled with tears. And I'm sorry they told you not to come to my recital. That was mean. I reached across the table and took her small hand in mine. Daniela, none of that is your fault. But I should have said thank you more. And I should have asked Mom why you couldn't come to my recital. And I should have stood up for you when they said mean things. What kind of mean things? She hesitated, then decided on honesty. They said you were being difficult about money. And that you were trying to control them. But Grandpa, you've never tried to control anybody. You just show up. You just love us. Out of the mouths of babes. This child understood something her parents had forgotten. The difference between love and control, between generosity and manipulation. I do love you, Daniela. Very much. I love you too, Grandpa. And I want you to come to my next recital. Even if Mom says it's just for immediate family, because you are immediate family. You're the most immediate family I have besides Mom and Dad and Tyler. That conversation led to another, this one with David alone. He came over the following Saturday without Rachel, without an agenda, just to talk. Dad, he said, sitting in the same chair where Daniela had delivered her apology, I've been thinking about what you said at the restaurant. About the $156,000. I waited. I never added it up before. I never thought about it as a total. Each time it just seemed like help with one thing. But when you put it all together... He shook his head. Dad, that's more than I make in 3 years. I know. And I never said thank you. Not really. Not in a way that acknowledged what a sacrifice that was for you. No, you didn't. He was quiet for a long time, staring at his hands. I think I got so used to you always being there, always saying yes, that I forgot you had a choice. I forgot that your generosity was a gift, not a right. It was the beginning of an understanding, if not yet a full reconciliation. David, I didn't help you all those years because I had to. I did it because I wanted to. Because I love you and I wanted to make your life easier. But somewhere along the way my help became expected instead of appreciated. And my presence became inconvenient instead of welcome. I know. And I'm sorry. Really sorry. Not because I want your money back, but because I want my father back. That conversation was the first of many. Slowly, carefully, we began to rebuild trust. David started calling just to talk, not because he needed something. He invited me to Tyler's games with genuine enthusiasm, not obligation. Rachel remained more distant, but she stopped actively excluding me from family events. The financial arrangement changed too. Instead of simply giving them money when they asked, we formalized a system. If they needed help with something significant, we would discuss it openly, with clear terms about whether it was a gift or a loan, and with genuine gratitude expressed and received. Tyler's birthday party was smaller than originally planned, held at their house instead of the expensive venue. But I was there from the beginning, helping to set up, taking pictures, being included in the celebration rather than just funding it. Daniela got her new violin, but it was a gift for her 9th birthday, chosen together with a handwritten thank you note that she framed and hung in her room. The most significant change was in the daily rhythm of our relationship. Sunday dinners became a regular tradition again, with real conversation and shared stories. David started asking for my advice about work and parenting, not because he felt obligated to include me but because he valued my perspective. It wasn't perfect. Some damage takes time to heal, and some trust, once broken, is slow to rebuild. Rachel and I would probably never be close, but we learned to coexist with mutual respect. Tyler remained somewhat distant, more interested in his friends than his grandfather, but that's normal for a teenage boy. Daniela and I grew closer than ever. She understood, in her young but wise way, that relationships require effort from both sides. She called me every Tuesday evening just to talk about her week. She asked for stories about her grandmother Margaret and her father's childhood. She made me feel not just loved but necessary. 6 months after that first honest conversation with David, I revised my will again. David was restored as a beneficiary, though not to the full extent he would have inherited before. Emma and Tyler's trust funds remained substantial. The Children's Hospital still received a significant donation in Margaret's memory. But I also added something new, a letter to be read at the will's execution, explaining my decisions and the lessons I hoped my family would learn from this entire experience. The letter concluded, "Love is not a transaction, but respect is not optional. Family loyalty must flow both ways. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone is to show them the consequences of taking you for granted." I hope they never have to read that letter for many years. But when they do, I hope they understand that everything I did, the withdrawal of support, the difficult conversations, the hard boundaries, was not about revenge. It was about teaching them to value what they had before it was gone. Rachel and I have found a workable détente. She'll never see me as anything more than David's father, and I've accepted that. But she no longer actively excludes me from family events, and she started thanking me genuinely when I help with the children. It's not warmth, but it's respect, and respect is enough. The financial arrangements have settled into a new normal as well. I help when there are genuine emergencies. Tyler's broken arm last year, Daniela's emergency appendectomy, but I no longer provide routine support for lifestyle choices or convenience expenses. David and Rachel have learned to budget for Tyler's activities and Daniela's lessons. The discipline has been good for them, and the appreciation they show when I do help is genuine. As I write this, the letter I prepared for my will sits in Harrison Burke's safe, hopefully unread for many years to come. But I've decided to share its contents here, because the principles it contains are relevant whether you're dealing with family betrayal, financial exploitation, or simply the everyday challenge of maintaining your dignity in difficult relationships. The letter reads, "To my family. If you are reading this, I am gone, and you are learning the final distribution of my estate. Some of you may be surprised by these arrangements. Others may feel they are unfair. I want to explain my reasoning not to justify my decisions, but to help you understand the lessons I hope you will carry forward. For most of my adult life, I believed that love meant saying yes. Yes to financial requests, yes to last-minute babysitting, yes to being excluded from events I had helped fund, yes to being treated as an inconvenience rather than a blessing. I thought that by always being available, always being generous, always being understanding, I was demonstrating my love for you. I was wrong. Love requires boundaries. Respect demands reciprocity. Generosity must be balanced with gratitude or it becomes exploitation. I spent 15 years giving you $156,000 and countless hours of my time, asking for nothing in return except to be included in the family I was supporting. Instead, I was systematically excluded, forgotten, and taken for granted. My silence about this treatment was interpreted as acceptance, and my continued generosity was seen as obligation rather than choice. The changes I made in my final years, withdrawing financial support, setting boundaries, demanding respect, were not acts of revenge. They were acts of self-preservation and education. I needed to remember my own worth, and you needed to learn the true cost of taking someone for granted. Daniela and Tyler, you are receiving the bulk of this estate because you showed me kindness and appreciation when others showed me indifference. You understood, even as children, that relationships require effort from both sides. I hope this inheritance will help you build lives of purpose and generosity, but more importantly, I hope you will remember to value the people who love you before it's too late. David, you are receiving less than you might have expected, not because I stopped loving you, but because I want you to understand that love is not enough. Respect, gratitude, and effort are required too. I hope that by the time you read this, you have learned to value relationships for their intrinsic worth rather than their instrumental benefits. To my entire family, I leave you this final lesson. People are not renewable resources. Love is not an unlimited bank account. And respect, once lost, is difficult to regain. Treat the people who love you as if they are precious because they are. Include them in your joys, not just your crises. Thank them for their generosity, don't take it for granted. And remember that the time you have with them is finite and irreplaceable. This is my final gift to you, the truth about love, respect, and human dignity. Use it wisely. With love and hope for your futures, Theodore Henley. As I finish writing this story, I'm sitting in my garden on a warm spring morning, watching Daniela practice violin on my back porch. She insisted on coming over early to rehearse for her spring recital, and I insisted on making pancakes to fuel her practice session. Tyler, now a senior in high school, has started talking about college plans. He's considering accounting, partly because he's good with numbers and partly because he wants to understand how his grandfather built a life of financial stability and generosity. I've offered to help with tuition, but this time, we've discussed it openly with gratitude expressed and boundaries established. The house is quiet except for Daniela's music and the sound of birds in the oak tree I planted 40 years ago. It's a good quiet, the kind that comes from peace rather than loneliness. I think often about that morning 2 years ago when I stood in my driveway holding cinnamon rolls and reading a text that changed everything. At the time, it felt like the end of something important. Now I understand it was the beginning of something better. A life where I am valued for who I am, not what I can provide. Sometimes the most important lesson we can teach the people we love is how to lose us. Not through cruelty or abandonment, but through boundaries and consequences. By showing them what life looks like when we're not available to solve their problems or fund their choices, we give them the opportunity to appreciate what they had. Some people learn that lesson quickly and adjust their behavior accordingly. Others need more time to understand the true cost of their actions. And some, sadly, never learn at all. But the lesson is always worth teaching because it's really a lesson about human dignity and the truth that every person, regardless of age, relationship, or circumstance, deserves to be treated with respect and kindness. If this story resonated with you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us share more chilling tales with you every day. I'd love to hear about your own experiences with family members who took you for granted. How did you handle it? What boundaries did you set? What lessons did you learn about the difference between being loving and being a doormat? Have you ever had to withdraw support from family members who didn't appreciate it? How did they react? Did it ultimately improve your relationships or end them? And for those of you who recognize yourself in David and Rachel's behavior, and we all have moments where we take the people we love for granted, what changes are you willing to make? How will you show appreciation to the family members who have been quietly supporting you? Remember, respect is not optional in any relationship. Love without boundaries becomes enabling. And sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone is teaching them what it feels like to lose you. Until next time, remember that your worth is not determined by what you can provide for others, but by who you are as a person. And anyone who can't see that value doesn't deserve access to your generosity. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next story of justice served quietly, but served completely.